And we are live. Welcome to another live stream. I finished first financially live stream. I'm Goran Radanovic. Actually, just before the live stream, I cut myself shaving. So hopefully I don't bleed during the live stream. It's wow, it's Thursday already, the 30th of May. So we've got one more live stream for the week. I do live streams 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday to Friday. Yeah, my plan is to keep up that momentum. I think that's really what's going to help grow this live stream so that we have a significant amount of people who, some of them who will eventually call in with their financial struggles, and then I can offer my perspective and hopefully they get some value from it. So that's my intention with this channel. And I think we should get right into this topic today, which is the order that I repaid my debts. It was kind of an easy decision to decide how to repay my debts because of how much one specific material possession was costing me. And when I made that commitment to repay off all of my debt, I obviously stopped taking out any more debt. Not like some people, they take out two credit cards and they're paying one credit card with the other, which is just unbelievable. But that's what's happening. Some people are in a really dire situation, and I feel that the only way to get out of a hole is to not dig it deeper, and that means not taking out any more debt. You need to stop that, and the sooner you do that, the sooner that you can pay off your current debt. I know it feels, you know difficult to make that decision to cut off all debt because you're in such a dire situation and you see this borrowed money as some kind of a solution just to get you by until you sort your problems out. But all debt it really is a short-term solution that provides you with kind of like a delay in payment, you could say, almost as a reprieve, as a it's buying you time. That's really what it is. But that time is just it's a short-term solution. It's going to run out. And then what waits for you is this long, grueling period that you have of repaying back this loan. And let me just see. Hopefully, there's no blood on my chin. So it's just something that seems like a good thing to do, but isn't, because in the long run, it's going to cost you more. It's going to cause you a lot of headaches. You feel like you've gotten this, like a breather, just that's bought you a bit of time, but then it's going to take away a lot of time from you in the long run. And it's going to cost you a lot more than what it can actually help you in the short run. So the first thing I did was obviously to stop taking out debt. I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want to dig the hole deep. I wanted to get out of my hole. And, the way I paid it off was really just adopting the minimalist lifestyle. I just completely reduced all of my expenses, eliminated a lot of them. And even the ones that I need, I try to reduce them as much as possible so that I was living on the bare essentials. And I did that for several years. It took me 7 years to pay off my debt, $40,000. And I had vehicle finance, I had credit cards, I had an overdraft, personal loan, which was the biggest one. And I also owed for my furniture. What else was there? I think like smaller. Yeah, there was also like a phone contract, a gym membership. Oh yeah, geez, now I'm starting to remember. Those were the smaller ones, but they were still there. And I remember at that time, I was homeless and I had no money, no savings, and a mountain of debt. So even this phone contract that I was liable for was something like, I think I remember back then maybe like $70. Now that's not a lot of money, but it is when you've got nothing. Yeah. So there's all these little debts that creeped up on me at the end, and it ended up being a big amount. So I've written an article. Let me just quickly get out of this. Did I press record? Oh, okay, I did. Sometimes I forget to record the live streams. I'm glad I did. So on finishfirstfinancially.com is an article that I wrote, the order that I repaid my debts. We're going to check it out now, but I just want to talk a bit about this before we read it. You know, how did I decide which debt to pay? You hear a lot of financial gurus promulgating, starting off with the smallest debts, and then working your way onto the second smallest debt and so forth until your last biggest debt is usually mortgage. That's for last. And I completely, I can see why that's a popular method and why it can definitely work. I chose to do it slightly differently. And the reason I chose to do it slightly differently is because, first of all, the reason that the experts suggest is starting off with the smallest debt first is because you need to build momentum. That's really what it is. The biggest reason that people don't get out of debt is because one of the biggest reasons is because they're not disciplined. They just enjoy the lifestyle that they're living and they want to keep living that lifestyle. So in order to make that change, which is lasting, you need to have discipline, and that requires you to take, go at your debt every single month, pay it, and just keep carrying on for months, usually for years. Now, that's very difficult for people to sustain over a long period. You pay off a debt, and then you see this other debts, and then it's like a third debt and a fourth debt. You still have to go. You're very much inclined to give up and not carry on when you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And what happens when you pay off the smallest debt first, it kind of gives you a motivation boost. It shows you that you can do this. It's like a reference experience that shows you've accomplished this one goal, as small as it may be, but now you're gonna go into the second goal, which is slightly more challenging, but you still believe you can do it because you've got this reference experience, and then you end up doing it. So now you've got these two debts that you've paid off, and the third one is even more challenging. But you know what? You're gonna go at it, and you just keep chipping and chipping away at it until the biggest one is lost, which is always daunting. And that's exactly how I experienced it. It was very daunting. So I had all of these debts, and the one that I got rid of first was my vehicle finance. The reason being is that, keep in mind, when you've got a vehicle that's financed, your total expenses for that vehicle aren't just the monthly payment to the creditor. You've got gas, maintenance, repairs, registration, licensing, insurance, all of these things that come with car ownership. For me, the total car expense monthly was 30% of my salary. So that is nuts. There is just no ways that I was going to get out of debt if I had this car. So eventually, because I stopped making payments on it, I had no money, no savings, no income. The bank repossessed my car, but I was still liable for all of this debt. So even though I didn't have gas and insurance and so forth, those expenses anymore, still, even if I had, I still decided to get rid of the vehicle finance first. I wanted it out the way, and that's what I started paying off first. I paid it off, and then I didn't get another car. The reason I didn't get another car is because my monthly car expense was 30%. And even if it wasn't, let's say I had gained some wisdom and I decided, well, I'm going to buy a car for cash, I still would have had gas, insurance, and all these other expenses every single month. And I didn't want that. I wanted to reduce my expenses as much as possible. So at the time, I was working from home. So I was fortunate in that regard. But when I needed to go to the grocery store, needed to go to the gym, I used public transportation or I even walked. And I kept that up. I mean, even today, this was my car got repossessed in 2017. Now it's 7 years later. I still don't own a car. Still don't own a car. I still use public transportation, sometimes my friend's car and so forth, but I don't own a car. I don't need one at the moment. And even if I do need a car, it just so happens that I need to buy one, then I'm definitely going to be buying one for cash, and it's going to be secondhand, and I'm going to spend maximum of $3,000 on it. Ideally, what I say is that your car should be 1% of your net worth. And that sounds crazy because you look at the cars that people are buying, they're $20,000, $30,000. So if they had to follow that principle, they would need a net worth of $2 million. And you'd say to me, well, that's crazy. Why would I follow that 1% rule? I don't have $2 million. Well, then you shouldn't be buying a car that's $20,000. You should be buying a car that's $2,000 or $3,000, and you can get reliable Hondas and Toyotas for that amount. Absolutely, you can. That are well taken care of, and as long as you keep looking after them, they will look after you. So just think about that. So that was the decision that I had made. No car. I don't want these additional expenses. I am gonna get serious about this debt. And with regards to the 1% of your car's purchase of your net worth, that principle really just makes a lot of sense to me, because why would you want to use more than 1% of your net worth to dedicate it to a liability? This material possession is losing value every single year. So why would you want to lose more than 1% of your net worth? It doesn't make sense. So that's where the 1% comes from. I made it up. That's just a rule that I follow. No, it seems most people are following a different rule because their cars are costing them at least $700 per month for a new vehicle and $500 for a second-hand vehicle in the States. Those are the statistics. That's what people are paying monthly for a car. Just think about if you didn't have that car and you had additional $500 per month. That's just for the payment. But let's just say that's the only expense. In a year, that's $6,000. In 2 years, that's $12,000. In 10 years, that's $60,000. Some people say, well, $60,000 in 10 years, that's not a lot of money. It's more than you're going to have if you keep having that car. Because that car is draining you financially. It's just a bottomless pit that's just taking from you, taking from you, taking from you. You don't need those expenses. You need to get out of debt. So I chose not to spend 30% of my income or any of my income actually on a car any longer. So that was the first debt that I paid off. Vehicle finance, got it out the way, and then I started with the smallest debt. I can't even remember what that was. I think it was the credit card, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was the furniture. Or I also owed for clothing, all these small ones, like in South Africa, you can buy clothing on credit. I'm sure everywhere else as well. So I owed even for clothing, for my cell phone contract, gym membership. So I paid off. Those were kind of like the first. And then I went on to the second smallest one, the third smallest one. And then I eventually so I paid it off, right? I paid off like the small one. Second one, I remember paying off my credit card. I got a deal from the lawyers because now my accounts had already been handed over to collections. So these lawyers were constantly bombarding me with phone calls. So they were demanding payment. And I kept delaying and delaying because I just didn't have money. Uh, by the way, here's something else that I did, which is actually extremely important. Before I went all in on debt, I decided that I wasn't going to be in a situation again where I have no money. Because it's all good and well to start paying off your debt and going hard at it. But what if my income stops? That's what I thought. What if I no longer receive money? What then? So not only will I not be able to pay my debt, but how am I going to pay my rent, mortgage, utilities? How am I going to buy food? If I'm dedicating all of my money and I don't have any saving, all of my money is going to debt and I have no savings. So that's why I decided that before I go all in on debt, I'm going to have a safety net. And this was an account it was a high yield savings account where I put money for 6 months of essential expenses. So I covered my rent, my utilities, and food for 6 months. So in case my income stopped, I could at least carry on living and not worry about being on the street again. And obviously, I said to myself, if my income does stop, then I'm stopping my debt payments for everyone because I'm not going to, the banks can wait a month or two until I sort out my finances. My intention is to pay them. Absolutely, I want to pay them, and I did pay them back. But if that were to happen, they're not going to go bankrupt if I don't pay them for a month or two, but I could be on the street if I give them that money and I don't have money for food and for shelter. That's not going to happen. So I made arrangements with them during that period where I was saving up that 6 months of essential expenses. Also had emergency fund just in case something cropped up and I needed to repair something or replace it, whatever it was. So I first had that in place and then I went all in on debt. So first one was the vehicle finance. Second one was second one was actually then the smallest one. Then I tackled the second smallest one, which I believe was a credit card, if I remember correctly. And I remember when I paid off the credit card, I was in touch with the lawyers and I paid it off, and it just felt like, wow, because I had a credit card for years. Even when I went on a trip to Cape Town, like my first real vacation, I put everything on that credit card. When I was paid for certain education with my credit card, clothes, everything was just going to the credit card. So I was just constantly paying off this credit card, always had it. And interest is just building up, and I'm constantly owing because I'm not keeping up. So once I paid off the credit card, and obviously I didn't have it, cut it up, and there was no account, probably that never would have given me another one anyway. I just felt completely different. It's like, wow, I can actually live without a credit card. This is unbelievable. This is something new. I've had this for years. It's become a part of me. It's like become a part of my life. And what the hell is this? Man. Yeah. And ajde molim te sutra, jer treba da dođeš na blagoslovi da vidiš. Dobro, u redu. Ajde tamo, jer sutra mi je jako važno, moram imati čaše vidim za Bosnu, tako da baš. Dobro, u redu. Ajde onda sutra ćemo da se dogovorimo da o tome. Pa da, ima nešto ima ranije. Da. Oh, man. I just. So sorry about that. Jeez. I received a phone call because I'm using my cell phone to record this live stream, and I received a phone call during it, and it just completely cut off. I didn't know it was going to do that. So you might have heard me, but not have seen me. Oh man, what a disaster. Okay, I think that let's. Oh, jeez, but I suppose everything is a learning curve, and I'll have to figure a solution for this in case I get a phone call again, so it doesn't cut off the visuals. Okay, let's get into the article. I think that's key that I read it. So let's quickly go and check it out. I wrote this last year, July. So I said, while I was living in my car on the street because of poor financial decisions, I also had $40,000 in debt. When I looked at the total debt, I thought I'd never reach the moment where I repaid my debts. It was too big of an amount and I had no income. Plus, I was homeless. My first concern was getting off the streets and never returning to it. So before repaying my debt, once I got off the street and started receiving an income, I knew I had to build a savings account to avoid being homeless again. The reason I ended up homeless is because I didn't have a safety net once my income stopped. Yeah, I just had debt and no income, no savings, and then my income stopped, so I was screwed. To ensure I never ended up on the streets again, I saved for an emergency fund and 6 months of essential expenses: mortgage, rent, utilities, and food. Those are your three crucial expenses. The emergency account should be at least $500, but preferably $2,000 to cover unforeseen expenses such as a burst water pipe or roof repairs. I plan to use the savings for the essential expenses only if my income stopped. Fortunately, that never happened. It's all good and well to dedicate any savings you have to paying off debt first, but what if your income stops? What use was paying off the debt when you didn't ensure you protected the roof over your head and had put food in your belly for 6 months? You know, what's more important, paying off the debt or having shelter and food? The bank just has to understand that you need some time to get back on your feet and you can make arrangements. You know, that's what it is. That's what I did. So the first debt I paid. Although some financial gurus suggest paying off your smallest debt first, I chose to pay off my vehicle finance first. My car monthly expenses were more than 30% of my income, and I figured if I didn't have those expenses, I could dedicate that money to the smallest debt. Logical, right? And the reason people aren't going to listen when I say it's best to get rid of your car so that you've got all of this money, you're not paying your vehicle finance, you don't have all of these other expenses such as gas, insurance, and repairs that you're dedicating to this car. You know, get rid of that so that you've got this money to dedicate to the debt. They're not going to do that because this car almost like represents their identity. You know, they're attached to it, they love it. It means so much to them, and it represents the success that's that they haven't really accomplished, because if they had, they would be paying cash for that car. So that's one of the major setbacks that people have when they see information such as this. Some people get angry and they're like, no, I don't want to listen to this. This is demoralizing, and you're telling me rubbish. Yeah, everybody chooses their own journey. This was what I chose. Obviously, everything I say is not financial or investment advice. It's purely for entertainment purposes. Everybody chooses how to handle their own finances. I'm just stating what I did. My car was repossessed because I failed to make payments and then sold at an auction, but the selling price was lower than what I owed on the vehicle finance. And I also had to pay the storage, administration, and auction fees. After I paid the vehicle finance, I didn't buy another car. That meant I had no gas, repairs, maintenance, registration, and other expenses associated with car ownership. If you work remotely or live in a city offering efficient public transport, you likely don't need a car. The average car payment for a used vehicle in the US in 2022 was $500 and $700 for a new vehicle. That excludes gas and other expenses to drive it. Considering 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, not having car expenses means they go from having nothing at the end of the month to having savings. For most people, the difference between not living paycheck to paycheck and having some savings at the end of the month means getting rid of their car. If they just got rid of their car and used public transportation, they would have an additional at least $500 every single month, because the average American is paying $500 per month for a used vehicle. And that excludes gas, maintenance, repairs, and all of these other expenses that come along with car ownership. $500 every single month is $6,000 every single year. That's probably more than most people have at the moment. So it does add up to quite a bit of money. And you'll only have that if you get rid of your car. That's a game changer for most Americans. And the reason I harp on not owning a vehicle unless you use it to generate an income. My car was repossessed in 2017 and I haven't owned one since. I've got cash to buy a car, but I'm not even considering that option until I have a net worth of at least $1 million. Why would I choose a liability over an asset? It makes sense, right? Many people's obsession with cars is one of the major causes of their financial struggles. Absolutely. Absolutely. So the debt I repaid following the vehicle finance, I saved a significant amount of money because I wasn't a vehicle owner. So I dedicated that money to the smallest debt. The whole point of paying debt is to do it as quickly as possible so that you don't lose that momentum, so that you don't become demotivated and give up. You want to pay off debt as soon as possible so that you build up that momentum and you just carry on with it. You don't want to drag out the debt repayment over a long period because you could lose the motivation to carry on. Or worse, you could lose your income. Then even if you want to pay debt, you won't be in a position to. Your risk increases with time, so it's in your interest to pay off the debt as soon as possible. The reason I tackled the smallest debts after paying the vehicle finance is that I wanted to build more momentum. Paying off one debt did wonders for my confidence. It showed me that I can pay everything off if I remain disciplined. The smallest debt was the quickest to pay off, and it boosted my momentum to pay off the second smallest one. The last debt I repaid. I repaid my biggest debt last. It took a few years, but it was worth it. I remember the moment I paid it. My shoulders lightened and the tension in my head eased. I no longer had to worry about receiving phone calls from lawyers threatening to garnish my wages or blacklist me. I was liberated. It was an amazing feeling, and I promised myself to never take on debt again. Three things that helped me to expedite my journey to pay my debts were living the minimalist lifestyle, not taking out new debts while paying off the old ones, and not having car expenses after paying the vehicle finance first. Here's some extra tips for you. Anybody can get out of debt, but it requires a drastic lifestyle change. I knew that I had to reduce all my expenses and eliminate all the non-essentials. That enabled me to have more money to dedicate to debt. Eating out, buying clothes, subscriptions, vacations, and similar expenses were out of the question. I was determined to pay off my debts fast. Just because you've been living with debt for several years, that doesn't mean it has to be that way for the rest of your life. Take it from a guy who was homeless and $40,000 in debt. I can tell you that it's much better to be debt-free and have $50,000 savings. You can get there, but it's going to require sacrifice. I knew that it was impossible for me to change my financial situation if I carried on doing things the way I had. To get different results, I had to think differently about money and then manage it better. If you can't manage $100, what makes you think you can manage $10,000? And that's what I spoke about yesterday. You know, you need to prove to yourself, prove to the universe that you can manage $100 before you can manage $10,000. Prove it. You start off with the smallest amount first, and then you work your way up. But you need to get to savings, you need to pay off your debt first. It's up to you how you do it, but obviously you need to remain disciplined. Find a formula that works for you. This was the one that worked for me, and just keep chipping away at it, because being debt free, having savings and investments is an incredible feeling. I'm going to catch you tomorrow at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll chat on a new topic then. And I apologize about this disruption that happened. It's unfortunate, but I suppose you learn as you go along. I'll catch you then.